Welcome. In the last lecture, we were discussing about the human cognitive limitations, and we said that while developing large software, this is a main problem that is faced. So, software engineering, which is essential for developing large software, tries to restrict this complexity, so that the effort and time required to develop software is linear with the size of the software. Otherwise, if the software engineering principles are not applied and a intuitive approach like a build and fix model is used, then the complexity growth, and that is basically the translates into the cost, effort and the time for development increases exponentially. And then we were discussing about how does software engineering principles tackle this complexity. And we had said that there are two major principles involved. One is abstraction and the other is decomposition. In this lecture, let us try to understand these two techniques well, because we will see that in almost every technique that is used by software engineering, these two are the basic principle behind those. So, let us discuss this abstraction and decomposition techniques. First thing is, what do we mean by abstraction? Abstraction is basically leaving out unnecessary parts and focusing on some parts that we require. Given a large problem, if we look at the problem in entirety, then it appears very complex. We would like to focus only one aspect of the problem and ignore the rest. So, that is basically called as abstraction. So, we focus our attention only one aspect of the problem and ignore other aspects that are irrelevant to the point that we are focusing, and this is also called as model building. Here we simplify a problem by omitting the unnecessary details, and that is basically constructing a model. Every abstraction requires construction of a model, and a model focuses on one aspect and it ignores rest. For example, we have a very large and complex building to be developed, and we just want to focus that how will it appear. Then we construct a frontal model of the building, we ignore the rest. What is its material it is built of, what is the thickness, what is the floor plan, internal design and so on. We just focus on the frontal view of the building. So, to summarize this abstraction, every abstraction requires some model building, and a model basically focuses on some aspect and ignores the rest. Now, let us see some examples of how abstraction can help. Let us look at a hypothetical case that you have been asked to develop an overall understanding of some country. Maybe you would be later given the responsibility to head the marketing department of some company for a country, let us say, and you have been asked that please develop a overall understanding of a country. So, to do this, what would you do? Would you go to that country, move around, try to meet people, look at where are the mountains, where are the rivers and so on, If you really did that, then it will be extremely complex task. It will take you tens or hundreds of years, still you will not be able to develop a proper understanding. You will not like to meet all the people, examine every tree in the country, river, mountain and so on. But what you would really do is refer to various types of maps of the country. The maps are basically model or an abstraction of a country. You will study the political map that focuses on the different provinces, capital, major cities, railway, road connectivity and so on. You will look at the physical map, you will try to find out the vegetation, the elevation of the different places, rivers, seashore and so on. So, an abstraction can help solve a complex problem very easily, and one thing to notice is that there are various types of abstraction for the same problem. But then is it that for every problem we can be happy with just one abstraction? Can just one abstraction help us develop a full understanding of a problem? No. Several abstractions to the same problem can be created. These focus on some specific aspect and ignore the rest, and the different types of models help to understand different aspects of the problem. For example, in the case of a building, we would like a frontal model, we like to develop a prototype, we like to develop a floor plan, we like to develop a thermal model of the building and so on. So, for the same problem, various models can be created, each focusing on some aspect of the problem. But if the problem is extremely complex, a single level of abstraction may itself be again complicated. We would like to create a hierarchy of abstraction. So, if these are the problems, we will create a first level abstraction, then we will create a second level abstraction, then an abstraction of those second level abstraction and so on. And if we look at the root level, that will be the simplest representation, and as we understand the simplest representation, we might look at the next level of the models and so on. So, for very complex problems, we would create a hierarchy of abstractions. As we proceed with software design, we will look at hierarchy of abstractions that are used, and in this hierarchical model, a model at any level is actually the details on which the next level of model is built. So, a model is an abstraction of a lower level model, and we say that it is an implementation of the higher level model. Let us look at abstraction of a complex problem, how a hierarchy can help, a hierarchical set of models can help. Let us look at a very complex problem that you have been asked to understand all the life forms that inhabit the earth. And remember, there are billions or trillions of species. So, in order to understand this life form, if you go on examining various species, nobody can complete the study in his lifetime. but then what you would do is you create an hierarchy of abstraction. If you look at a biology book, you will find such an abstraction, because they want to explain the reader the simplest way, and they have constructed this abstraction that at the top level there are only 3 types of living organisms: the animals, plant and the fungus. And then we have the mollusk, chordata, etcetera, etcetera, and there are further hierarchies until you reach the bottommost, and these are the species. I was just saying that there will be trillions of species here. So, for a complex problem, the number of layers in the hierarchy can be large, and each of these layers is basically a model. Let us just try to examine our understanding of what we discussed, because this is after all a very important principle. What exactly is a model? We said that a model is an abstraction where we focus on some issues and we ignore the rest, and several types of models can be there for a problem. And if it is a complex problem, we would like to create a hierarchy of models. But then the next question that we would like to answer is that why is it necessary to develop a model? How does construction of a model help? Okay, the answer is straightforward, that understanding a complex problem is extremely difficult due to human cognitive limitations. We would like to first understand the simplest form of the problem, that is at the top of the hierarchy, and then we will look at the other models to develop an incremental understanding of the problem. The third question is, give some examples of models that you are aware of. Try to think the different items that you deal with every day, and can you think of places where model is used? What about the content page of a book? Is it a model of the book? What about a simulation experiment? Are we constructing a model and then trying to experiment on the model as if we are experimenting on the real system, and so on. So, you may come up with hundreds of different models that we use in the real life. Now, let us look at the other important principle, which is decomposition. Decomposition, as it means, is to decompose a complex problem into small independent parts, because the problem in its entirety is extremely complex, hard to understand. It takes exponentially large time, but we would like to break it into small problems, and then we look at, examine and understand the small problems, and then once we put them together, we have the understanding of the entire problem. Have you come across some such principles in daily life? Yes, there are many places where we use decomposition. We divide a large problem into small parts, and then these small parts are easily grasped and solved, and then we put them together, this solution to the small parts, and we have the solution to the full problem. One of the very popular example of the decomposition principle is that if you try to break a bunch of sticks tied together, it would be extremely complex, but then if you decompose it, then you can break the sticks individually. But then one word of caution when using the decomposition principle is that a arbitrary decomposition of a problem may not help. We have to decompose such that each small problem can be solved separately. If we want to, let us say, draw an elephant, if we decompose in arbitrary ways, it does not help. We thought that we will just draw each of them separately and then we will put them together, but each individual part drawing that may not be much easier. So, we need to decompose properly, we will see how to properly decompose a problem and then we can solve it easily, and this is also a cornerstone in all software engineering principles. Let us look at some examples. Let us say a book is written haphazard, it is all mixed up. It would become extremely complex for somebody trying to read the book. What somebody would get helped, what will really help is that a book is nicely decomposed into different chapters. Each chapter is independent. Introduction, chapter 1 deals with something, chapter 2 deals with something else, and so on. So, a chapter organization of a book is actually a decomposition into a complex large thought into small manageable parts. So far we saw that software engineering really helps when we have large problem to solve, as are the industry standard problems. But then we saw that there are two main techniques, abstraction and decomposition. Now, let us see what are the benefits that will accrue from study of the software engineering principles. The first thing is that we will get the skills to develop large programs, because the intuitive technique of build and fix, just try to program and then debug, does not work for developing large programs. We should be able to create models, that is abstraction, we should be able to decompose a large program, and that would be the way to handle exponential growth in complexity. So, this is a very important skill, that how do we use the abstraction and decomposition principles in developing large programs. As we proceed, we will see the techniques that make use of this and help us create models and also decompose a large problem. So, these are systematic techniques which will help us in applying the principles of abstraction and decomposition. The second most important reason why we need to study software engineering is that we will learn systematic techniques, how to specify a problem, how to go about designing, how to do the user interface development, how to do testing, how to do project management, maintenance, etc. So, these are the various specialized aspects of software engineering, and we will get a glimpse of this, and we will appreciate the issues that arise in team based development. Not only that, for large projects software engineering principles will be useful, the skills that we acquire will also help us in developing small programs in a better way. So, that even for small programs, after studying the software engineering principles, will have higher productivity and will be able to write better quality programs. Now, let us look at a few basic issues before we look at the software engineering principles. The first thing is that what is the difference between a job and a project? A job is something which is routine, we can easily do it. Project involves some challenge and exploration is where there is a uncertainty of outcome. A job is a repetition of some well defined and well understood tasks with very little uncertainty. For example, I ask you that go to the market and fetch a chocolate. Yes, it can be done. We know how to go to the market, know how to buy a chocolate. So, it is a well defined, well understood task, can be easily done. There is no uncertainty, you can definitely do it. An exploration is a work whose outcome is uncertain. For example, we ask you that find a cure for cancer. You will go about doing the work, but never know whether there will be any success at all. Project is somewhat in between a job and exploration, which is completely uncertain and also completely deterministic are the projects where there are many challenges, but then some of the work is also routine. So, we know that what exactly is a project. A software development project consists of some routine work as well as there are challenges in it. Now, let us look at the different types of software projects that currently the industry undertakes. There are mainly two types of software projects. One is product development projects or generic software development projects, and services projects or custom software development. So, these are the two broad categories of projects, the product development projects and the services. The total size of the industry for software development is extremely large, several trillions of $, and right now nearly half of this is about developing and selling products, and the other half is about services. But then the growth in services is much more than in products, and soon we will have the services market much more than the product market. And just remember that about 50 years back almost everything was product, there was hardly any service. Let us examine the issues in the software product development project and the services projects. The product development projects are basically packaged software. These are available off the shelf. Anybody can order and buy this software. Already these have been made and you just have to buy. But then if we look at the packaged software or the software products, there are two main types. One is the horizontal product. These meet the needs of many companies. For example, let us say a word processing software, or let us say an operating system and so on. These are horizontal because a large number of companies and individuals are interested, whereas a vertical market software, a vertical product focuses only a small group of companies. For example, let us say we may talk about the telecom domain, and here there are software for the telecom domain. Let us say chemical plant simulation. So, that is another vertical market, or the banking software, that is another vertical market where only the banks are interested. So, there are two types of products. One is the horizontal products. This is developed for almost everyone might need this product, whereas the vertical only a specific type of industry they would be interested in the vertical product. But a custom software projects, these are the services. Here the software is developed at some user's request. Let us say an academic institution wants to automate its bookkeeping activities, like let us say academic grading, fees collection, establishment, salary, etc. So, it might get a software, it might request a company to develop its software, but then the company that would develop it will not develop from scratch. It would usually have some solution for educational software, and then it will tailor only small parts of it to meet the requirement of this specific educational institute. Every custom software is basically will have some software generic version, or let us say done for some customer, and then it is tailored or custom made for the other customers. So, we will just stop here, the time is getting over. We will stop here and we will continue from this point in the next lecture. Thank you.